Well, good morning, everyone. I am Paul Donato, Head of Research here at the ARF, and welcome to today's Insight Studio, Overcoming Last Click Addiction, Strategies for Holistic Marketing Success by OptiMine. The recording and deck and key takeaways for today's meeting will be sent out sometime early next week to all the attendees. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that the submission period for the David Ogilvy Awards is now open, and the deadline is June 4th. The David Ogilvy Awards is the leading program that recognizes excellence in research and insights, research and insights-driven advertising. These awards serve as a testament to the transformative power of data and creativity in achieving ROI, which is increasingly vital. Enhance your brand, client, and team's recognition and influence by showcasing your innovative work and becoming part of advertising history. Remember, the deadline for submission is June 4th. Now let's get started. OptiMine and NP Digital will share a presentation and case study for the next 40 minutes or so, and then we'll be following by a panel. So by all means, have your questions, put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will try to get to all of them during the panel discussion. So it's my pleasure first to introduce Kelli Brady. Kelli is the Director of Client Success at OptiMine, where she acts as a strategic marketing leader on the client success team. In this role, she provides media optimization guidance to her clients in education, apparel, and consumer electronics sectors, ultimately advancing their brand. And we have Karen Bellin, who is VP Data Analytics and Insights at NP Digital. With over 20 years experience in innovation and marketing, Karen's expertise is in leveraging data and insights and has enabled global brands in finance, technology, e-commerce, CPG, higher education, and entertainment to achieve their desired outcomes. Kelli, I'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Really good to be here alongside Karen from NP Digital. At OptiMine, I lead client relationships for a number of retail brands, so I'm looking forward to getting started. So before we jump in, a quick word on OptiMine. We're a leading MMM solution that measures the incremental impacts of marketing and media to optimize full funnel mix and individual channel performance, with a focus on providing granular measurement at speed. We're proud to work with a number of successful and storied US and international brands, including Best Buy, Amazon, Paramount, General Mills, Nordstrom, Crate & Barrel, and Tommy Hilfiger, so many others. One of the major challenges brands are facing today is receiving accurate and actionable cross-channel and cross-funnel performance measurement. Completing this full picture has become more and more difficult, and with added budget scrutiny and finance pressure than ever. Getting your online and offline performance all in one place accurately and at speed is mission critical. Many of our clients first come to us with a struggle or a dilemma. Their management teams are accustomed to reviewing media and marketing performance either daily, weekly, or monthly using last click or last touch data primarily. We hear from many of them that they know their data isn't necessarily accurate, but it's the best that they have. It's closer to real time, and they're not really sure how to replace it. We hear this over and over again, that leaders need some form of reliable, accurate performance measurement delivered more often than the standard annual or twice annual MMM refresh cadence. Last click and last touch tends to fill that gap between refreshes. They also want measurement for their full set of media, not only channels easily tracked through last click, last touch, or MTA. So think TV, direct mail, print, some of those more traditional channels. In the existing paradigm, those types of channels are often forgotten or at least deprioritized. And finally, they want a solution that can adapt to changes made at a detailed level within channels. Ultimately, for many brands, inertia understandably takes over, and reporting based on last click and last touch is the simplest and fastest way to share performance, even if it's missing a large chunk of data and tends to be biased towards channels and tactics that get clicks. That's what we mean by addiction, the ability and need to check performance every day, hourly, whenever they need, is something that makes marketers and leaders feel good. But we want to feel good about the right data. not just any data. eMarketer conducted a study last year and found that while almost 80% of marketers use last click and last touch, about 3/4 of them would love to get rid of it. But as we mentioned, it's the devil they know. How do we know it's bad and it's not working? Well, there was another study, and this time conducted by Northwestern University. Last click and last touch error rates for channels across the funnel are all over 100%. There's the problem. It's not just that it's not accurate, it's not good for business because decisions are being made with wholly incorrect data. What's worse is that the errors aren't consistent across channels and funnels. Because lower funnel media relies more on clicks, incrementality predictions are higher than they should be. All right, that was some doom and gloom. So here's what you can do about it. We've put together some best practices for moving some reporting and insights from last click to MMM. First, it's important to get internal alignment and in particular leadership buy-in and support on adopting better measurement and actioning on more detailed and recent data. Agree on lower risk, shorter sprints for quicker wins. Gain alignment along the way for small improvements to process and reporting. Don't pass go, don't collect $200. Once the case is made and the path is set for a new measurement solution to be integrated, decide on the provider and approach, and discuss how this new tool fits into the larger ecosystem. And finally, while MMM is many of our clients' source of truth, last click does and should have a role. We'll get into that in the right tool for the right job section. So applying the framework in practice, most brands have a weekly or monthly dashboard that gets shared with leadership. We'll start here as an example of the framework. So let's first acknowledge that last click has some real problems. It tends to overvalue clickable ads and ignore other spend that primes the pump for the sale. Think mid and upper funnel channels and tactics. If incrementality is the goal, tracking only ads that get clicks misses a big part of the picture. Using your company's unique dashboard, discuss and acknowledge what could be enhanced with MMM and what is still useful for incorporating last click. Be sure to engage not only marketing, but also finance and other executive leaders as well. Some of the items in red are places to think about migrating first. Help folks become more comfortable with moving away from clicks and towards a more agnostic view of the world like impressions. So media can begin to be evaluated on a more level playing field. That's the cornerstone of our MMM. Impressions are the gold standard in terms of an audience metric. Week by week, check in with your teams to understand their feedback around metric changes, what's working for them, what's not, and what can be improved. Integrating new measurement like MMM can in fact be fast and right. While retraining and rescoring tends to happen monthly or quarterly for most of our clients, OptiMine has also created a weekly pacing estimate for many of our clients who want to see the previous week's media performance using the most recent set of model coefficients. As an aside, many folks may think that MTA gets updated either real time or daily, but they're usually scoring off of the most recently trained data as well. So now the final phase is right tool for the right job. Shifting the thinking on last click. It's great for real-time campaign level comparisons and creative testing results, absolutely. We also have experience calibrating channels within our MMM to align with external testing where appropriate. A number of free and low-cost ad platform testing also exists. Many of you may also be using them already. Randomized control tests are great for point-in-time validation of MMM. We have a lot of experience with this as well. So while MTA is useful for identifying UX, CX issues, it does tend to fall short on measurement, especially when you're looking at a more holistic view. So in summary, most agree that last click and multi-touch attribution isn't always the right tool for all jobs. Breaking away can seem daunting. So don't boil the ocean. Create small wins via agile sprints. Begin with a 3-step framework, like the one we've outlined here for gaining alignment and buy-in. And then use MTA and last click in tandem with a full funnel solution like an MMM for short, medium, and long-term performance analytics. Ultimately, make decisions about your media and your marketing investment more holistically for the best return. So one last note before we move into our poll, and I turn it over to Karen. If you're curious to learn more about the types of insights that we provide our clients, check out our 2024 OptiMine Index. It's a great place to review media and performance trends we've gathered over the course of the year and provide some ideas for optimizations moving into 2025. So now we're going to pause for a poll before Karen shares her case study. You guys should see a pop-up on your screen in a minute or two. Yep, and we'll just give you guys a minute. So are you guys using last click today? Are you planning on moving away from it in the next 12 months? We can just let those roll in for a moment. Nice, all right. So it's about 50-50 in terms of currently using last click. And another 50-50 for moving away from it in the next few months. So pretty close to alignment with some of those studies we showed a bit earlier. So thanks for your input, and we will move forward with turning it over to Karen for her case study.
Oh, wow. I'm interested to see that 50% are not even thinking of moving away from last click. Maybe I can change your mind a little bit sharing this case study. Or maybe you have reasons for sticking with it, and that's okay too. And Paul, thank you for the introduction. And Kelli, thanks for having me. I love the framework that you presented. We are already working with our clients on that mindset of shifting away from a focus on clicks to impressions, on essentially applying multipliers when we look at some of our media based on the results from the MMM. How can we better understand impact ongoing when we're waiting for results from our next run, and then calibrating against our testing. So I really appreciate that framework, and I'll certainly be circulating that around. Now I'm going to go into a specific case study, and this one is pretty compelling because it's showing how we paired the media mix modeling with a pretty major strategic pivot in how we unified our upper funnel media spend. And this is an area where last click, it undeniably falls short as a measurement approach. And it's also a case where you see MMM informing our strategy as well as being a driver of measurable growth. So let's dive in. This case study is a blinded case study. So let's just call the company an accredited trade school. And they are an incredible accredited trade school. As part of my role at NP Digital, I lead the data analytics and insights strategy for their marketing program, which is a full funnel program. And the students that they're bringing into their program, for them, this is a highly considered purchase. Think of it like a college degree. It's something they're likely only going to do once in their lifetime, and it's going to take not a ton of time, but an appropriate amount of time to become skilled enough to take on one of these careers. They have programs all across the United States in automotive, robotics, HVAC, many of these areas that are very hot right now from a job market standpoint. And they're mission is really to provide the communities, the partners, the students in these careers who are affected by the careers with the quality education and support for folks to be successful in these jobs. And they've had incredible impact with graduating over 225 students all across the country. All right, so let's get into their marketing reporting. There, we talked a little bit, alluded to some of the challenges with changing measurement and even putting measurement in place. And a lot of the challenges that we see with bringing an MMM on board are similar to challenges you might have with introducing any new type of measurement in an organization. So with this organization, their leadership absolutely supportive of using the most appropriate measurement tool for the decision at hand. As long as overall goals are met by campus, by program, and overall, there's a lot of trust earned and given to leverage the appropriate type of measurement. Now, that said, most measurement tools don't just magically appear at the time that you need the decision, the data for the decision you're making. So for the longest time, this organization was almost totally reliant on last click measurement. And their reports looked like what I'm showing you here before NP Digital started to work with this organization. The reports were built in Excel, they're manually updated, but incredibly consistent, incredibly accurate, very disciplined process to get these updated every single week. It's a little small here, but in the top area there, they have their KPIs tracked. They have below that, they have their general media spend over time in the same weekly granularity across every single tactic, TV, radio that they're buying in. It's there. Then you have every single channel that they're buying in that has strong last click attribution. That spend and that attribution is represented in this report. And then at the bottom, they look at the website in terms of engagement on different types of pages. The paid media landing pages separately from the program pages, separately from the general interest pages. So they know that all of these things work together. The upper funnel media, the very attributable lower funnel media, paid search, paid social, most of YouTube, and the website. But they don't have that very direct signal on how each of those is contributing to their KPIs. They have a very strong signal for their lower funnel channels, but not for everything else that is so critical to achieving their goals. So when I saw this, when we first started to work with this client, I thought first, let's automate this. And then also, this is going to be a great candidate for an MMM. But they had only hired us to manage their lower funnel media. Guess why? That media is, from their standpoint, using last click measurement, is the most measurable, and they can hold us accountable to certain metrics against those specific channels. Of course, they understood, like I was showing you, they still look at everything holistically, but they were able to, because they very much understood and been tracking this last click media consistently over time, they knew what they're looking for when they handed it over to us to manage. And that was something that we took on happily, and we automated that report. We made it more granular daily. We added more segmentation so that we could drill into different facets of how we organize their media buys. And while the client was still managing the upper funnel media at that time, they were able to continue that rigor to add the data around the spend at the weekly cadence into our report so we could continue to do that side-by-side analysis. So great, it's a little bit more granular, it's a little bit more frequent, but we still don't see how upper funnel is directly affecting our KPIs. So you might wonder, why didn't they have an MMM? And I was thinking about this, and I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember, but working across many different clients, there are some reasons that come up. One is they've had a bad experience with MMM. For example, I've seen the MMM not be granular enough to be actionable. It's at a too high level. That's one thing. Or maybe it just didn't, like they didn't understand it because it's so different from other measurement that was done. And that leads into not having somebody to lead it. That can be a reason why there's no MMM in an organization that has a full funnel media spend. And then the other one is just always competing priorities with that data and analytics team. There's needs post conversion, there's needs on the product, and then marketing needs can sometimes be not top of the list, especially things when things are going fine. And things are going fine, but we did feel like we could do better. And so when about a year later, they gave us the upper funnel to manage, we knew what we needed to do. We wanted to be great stewards of that spend, and we wanted to have better visibility into its impact. So that's why we brought in OptiMine, because they have that deep experience with doing media mix modeling for lots of companies. We could rely on that experience to help with the adoption within this client, as well as the tools that are marketer friendly. So UIs that you can log into, you can chart and drill into the data from the model, as well as yield curve planning tools and media budgeting tools. So with that expertise paired with our expertise around all of the data and having automated all of those data, all of the marketing context that the MP Digital team had across every single platform where media was being purchased, as well as the client's understanding of their business, their seasonality, all of the factors that influence why a student might choose their school together, we were able to put in place, bring in the MMM as part of how we manage the full funnel advertising. Okay, so that means we did 3 things here. First, we moved them into a single demand side platform for unified upper funnel advertising. This type of platform is different than doing these upper funnel media buys one by one with each individual platform. You do them all together in a single platform so that you can manage your reach and frequency, you can minimize your audience overlap, you can scale your buying power, and it's all in the interest of reducing waste. And that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure every marketing dollar that's being spent is working as hard as it can toward driving conversions for the business in a meaningful way that helps serve that mission. And so for this case study, that means matching students with these programs to help them get into fulfilling careers. At the same time that we did that, we actually introduced 2 new forms of measurement at once. So we did introduce an MTA where we've tagged every single ad that's going out across these platforms. Where available, we're tracking impressions, where available, we're tracking clicks, and then we're tracking that through to page views and conversions from the website, as well as integration with the web analytics. This is letting us see those multi-touch paths. It's letting us see for folks who don't convert, do they do anything on the website? So that's filling a little middle area between the last click and the MMM. So of course, what we're here to talk about today is that introduction of the MMM, which is filling such a huge gap, which is attribution for those previously unattributable channels, as well as the scenario and budgeting planning tools. Okay, so now at this point, the MMM has become the go-to for decisions related to how to make the awareness spend more effective. And one of the biggest decisions was to move over to that single demand side platform. And we saw remarkable results with the MMM. We saw year over year that we are able to reach a larger audience while bringing that cost per conversion down, and that we were able to sustain that. And it's even helping with data points beyond just to say, okay, awareness is having an impact. It's saying awareness is driving people to our website, or people who see our ads are converting. So let's make sure that we're creating that consistent experience for that prospective student when they're exposed to these ads, which sometimes can become disconnected from the website experience. But here we're able to say, let's make sure that we're connecting these ads to what people might experience on the website, because they're not necessarily going to come in on a paid media landing page. They might come in through a homepage or from a search or through social media. And that's where we want to make sure that we're saying, how can we even make this more effective? We can make it more effective by tweaking things and seeing that will reduce friction through that sign up process. The nice thing about the MMM that we've built with this client and with OptiMine is its granularity. And we have identified a couple of high value audience segments within the high school and adult age groups that we're often trying to tighten our age targeting around, because we can drive more mutual beneficial results by bringing these students into the programs. Of course, students outside of these age groups also are benefiting from the programs, but we have identified certain groups that we find even benefit the most. So as we're looking at the improvements of the awareness spend using the MMM, we're seeing improvement specifically in our targeted audiences. And we're running the MMM every few months, and we're saying, okay, based on this, it looks like these changes are having a positive impact. So let's continue to expand these further, for example, and that's how we're sustaining and continuing to grow the impact of that upper funnel. And I want to talk about buy-in in that context. So when we look at the whole group working on the full funnel media for this client, we have, of course, client budget owner, we have client strategist, we have media planning within NP Digital, we have channel leads within NP Digital. So we have different leads for the programmatic, which is mainly upper funnel, for paid social, different from paid search, different from website conversion rate optimization. So we have all these different specialties who may be affected by the things we're seeing in the MMM. The ones who are buying in fastest are the leads for those programmatic awareness channels. But their buy-in is really dependent on that media strategist, that media planner, having putting urgency behind having the data points that we need to allocate spend appropriately to meet the client's goals. And then we have the client, again, who I was saying is trusting us to make the best decisions on how to spend their data to meet these outcomes, and that they're bought in, as long as they're seeing that by using these data, we're able to move the needle on them and have clear results. So the other thing is that along with that, these data aren't being used in a vacuum. So when it makes sense or when it's available, we might see something in the MMM and want to make a change, but we will try to understand how is this going to affect other measurements we have, or how might other measurements we have affect our understanding. A lot of these programmatic channels, we do geo holdout tests in. So Kelli was mentioning about calibrating with testing. So that is something that we're looking at as well. Here's another split. This time we're looking by platform. And so to reach those desirable audiences, we are trying out sending media into more contextually relevant spaces where these audiences might be. So think like sports oriented or gaming oriented, and leaning into trying different ways to reach these audiences. And the MMM is giving us signals back from a KPI impact standpoint on how to reallocate that spend. So here we have a bunch of different platforms, and we have platform C and B there in the middle that we're spending the most money on, and we're seeing a difference in their cost per modeled KPI here is what we're seeing. So here we might say if there's room or if it makes sense, let's start to move some budget from platform C, which has a higher cost per modeled KPI, into platform B, for example. You also see that we have platform A has the lowest cost per modeled KPI, but we're only spending a fraction of the amount of spend in that platform versus C and B. So now there might be some gotchas here. There might be reasons we can't spend more. Maybe we've reached everybody we can in the platform, or for other reason we can't spend more, or perhaps it's a new platform we just started with, so we want to wait to get a little bit more data. Or maybe there is underlying data that we know we put into the model that we want to clean up, and we don't want to make a decision on this quite yet. And I'll talk a little bit more about that process in toward the end here. But this is just the idea that we are able to get pretty granular and actionable through the MMM to a level where we can start to look at reallocating at a platform level within an awareness objective. The other tool that we have through the MMM is that yield curve planning. So in addition to what our strategists might see is available in their media platform with regard to increasing spend or decreasing spend, we do have the yield curves for assessing if we're at a point of diminishing returns with spend for any platform. Also, that could tell us if we want to keep spend levels the same, increase spend levels, or bring spend levels down to affect the volume of KPIs and the cost per KPI. Here's another look at the data from the MMM we're using, where we're able to look at our KPIs over time. And OTT is a strategy that we introduced for the client shortly after taking over the upper funnel media. And when we look over time, we say with the blue line that we came in pretty hot. Our cost per KPI at the beginning of introducing these platforms was pretty high, but then we brought it down over time. So this one is a good example of playing around with that idea of, should awareness spend be more consistent than what we might see with lower funnel spend, where we might try to like ramp it up when we need to bring in a few more students, ramp it down when we're good. But maybe awareness, we want to try to hold that investment, keep it steady, especially if we can control the cost per KPI. So this is something that we're monitoring when we're looking at those data over time and seeing how shifts in our spend are affecting the efficiency of the media. Now, we also have to consider, seasonality, or what's going on in the client's business, or like I was saying, what's available on the platform in these cases. This is also another area where we might be able to use the MTA to see if there's a difference in how people are, what people are doing on a website, or how they might be interacting with our other channels, even if they're not converting. So this is an area where we are using MMM to understand impact, but also looking at other data sources to make the best decision on how to continue with each of these platforms. So this was a big shift. It was a big deal for this organization to move their upper funnel media buying to NP Digital. They didn't have an MMM. They knew upper funnel was critical to achieving their goals. So, so there was a little bit of a risk to hand it to us, knowing what was at stake and knowing how challenging it would be to know if doing this move was paying off. But we had a few things going for us. We had really great data from the beginning, from working with them from the beginning, and the improvements we were able to make with the data. And we had the idea to bring in these better, more modern tools, the better way of doing the upper funnel media for this client, the better measurement with the MMM and the MTA. So by bringing this unification of the media management together with introduction of new measurement tools, we're able to drive pretty significant impact for the business. As you can see, they experience not just an improvement in their awareness KPIs as measured by the MMM, but in their overall KPIs, and you don't need any attribution model to see that. And then you have the awareness spend having become more efficient, 20% more efficient year over year at the same time. And you have much stronger awareness, much stronger KPI influence from the awareness spend that the media mix model is showing. And that was done with confidence of the client to increase their investment in those upper funnel strategies. So the process, I mentioned I wanted to talk a little bit about the process of getting here. So we have a schedule for each MMM run, and we run these like every few months, every 3-4 months. Just depends, maybe 2 to 4 months. And then what we do is we do data prep ahead of that. And because we're relatively new with the MMM, where, as I said, we started this when we started managing the upper funnel media, we're still working through how can we best represent our strategy in the media mix model at the appropriate granularity. So each time we do the run, we're getting a little bit better at that. The good news is we continue to see that when we make decisions, even though the model might change in the next run, we're still seeing a positive impact from the changes we made. So we do the data prep to better align what we're putting into the model with our strategy. And as I was showing you, we're constantly looking at new platforms, but we're constantly looking at new creative. And this organization is constantly looking at how they can better serve their students. So there's a lot of things moving. So we always have to look at that data prep, make sure everything is tagged appropriately. We hand that over to our partners at OptiMine, and they're running through the model magic that they do. And then they bring that back to us and we do a comparison. What changed? Do we agree with the change that we're seeing here? Does it make sense for our strategy? So, okay, now we're feeling good about the data, the model results. And then right away, our media strategist, our media planner can hop into the OptiMine UI and pull insights right away about decisions she's trying to make or she made or impact she wants to see. At the same time, the data analytics team is doing a deep dive into the awareness insights and looking for opportunities to continue to improve the efficiency of that media. Then they're bringing that to the channel specialists to weigh in and provide context and think through what next steps might be made. And that's all packaged for the client review, which we do as a deep dive session. And then we pull out key insights from that review to include in the quarterly business review that goes to the executive. So that's the process. And we repeat that every few months. It's a lot, but as you can see, it's paid off. It shows us looking back the impact we had, and it helps us looking forward plan to improve what we're doing ongoing. So I hope you could see through this data how we're able to bring together the strategy, the execution, the measurement to drive results in a way that is not reliant at all on last click measurement.
Very good. Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Kelly. Kelly, why don't you join us back on screen? So we have a number of questions. Many of them focus around last click and difficulties of getting rid of last click, and many of them focus around the actual case study. So maybe we'll kind of follow it in time order. But I guess the question that I have always had is, why is it so difficult to eliminate last click? 50% of this audience is still using it. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about why it is so difficult? And even if you had a better understanding of the origins, I've heard technically at the early days of digital, it was the only way to get data. So I don't know if that's true or not. And I certainly don't think that that is true today. But either Kelly or Karen, whoever wants to take that on.
Yeah, I can jump in first. So I think there's a couple reasons. One is just simply ease and access to data. So Normally, platforms want you to continue to use their platform, so they want to make it really easy for you to understand the insights and the impact of the spend within their particular channel. So that's one reason you're already likely paying for it, and it's easy to plug into any sort of APIs or other dashboards you're already using. The other thing would be, I think, access to data that is not digital is also a bit more difficult, especially when you're looking at mid or upper funnel channels. It can be a bit more manual in that respect. So somebody needs to be maintaining those sheets and understanding, what was spent on, let's say, influencers or something that is a bit harder to track, or PR. So we've worked with our clients to help them kind of standardize their data organization and shipping to us. But that can seem overwhelming when you've got a list of, in some of my clients' cases, 15 to 20 channels. Half of them are easy because they're digital. And the other half may be harder to maintain, in a TV, out of home, print, that are still really important for driving awareness, but not as automated. I don't know if you have anything to add, Karen, why last click tends to be a bit easier to keep.
That makes sense. I think my other thought when I saw this question is that MMM has been around for a long time, and especially in organizations that did a lot of traditional marketing. So I think that it's really adoption within marketers who are more full in on digital, like I was just sharing in the case study, moving away from maybe 10 years ago, before a lot of this cookie blocking was a big issue, kind of believing that everything was going to be super, super, super measurable at this last click level. And it almost made it, but it didn't quite make it. And now MMM is available to fill that gap for them.
So, and a lot of people believe that the future, when third-party cookies finally are deprecated, that the future is really market mix modeling 2.0. But I wonder how many people in the audience are extremely familiar with the concept of a modeled market mix modeling. So Karen, you said every 2 to 3 months, and in the old days when this was all about regression, it took 70 days to actually get a market mix model out there. And so by the time you got the data, it was 2 to 3 months old. Tell me, both of you actually spoke about the modeling process. Tell me more about how that works. And is it weekly? And what can you do about non-digital media? Is that purely based on the spend data?
Yeah, so many of my clients are on a monthly refresh cadence, which means that we're taking in data gather within a couple of days at the close of the previous fiscal month. If it's in the same format that we get every month, it's very streamlined. So we can spit back a QA within a few days if everything passes our checks. And then we get to modeling. So a pretty standard monthly or quarterly refresh tends to take 3 to 4 weeks to be able to get from data gather to results that are available to clients like Karen and our UI. And then being able to begin, doing those media plans. We also have those weekly pacing reports that I mentioned that are a really great stopgap between monthly refreshes. So if you're on week 2, week 3, week 4, between a refresh, you can still get a nice estimate of what last week's media did using the last model's results. So in terms of speed, it's definitely faster than 70 days. But yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Are you using if all you have available on a weekly basis is last click? Do you use that to refresh the models? It's a modeled market mix modeling that you're producing. Am I right on saying on a weekly basis, or is that more monthly?
So essentially we just take in impressions and spend at whatever level is most useful for planning. So channel and campaign level, tactics, everything underneath that are also included in those. So it is just a matter of impressions and spend, and the full refresh happens on whatever cadence is most useful for the client, quarterly, monthly. And then that stopgap for more of those weekly business reviews internally with leadership is a nice way to say, are we pacing in the correct direction? Or, we did make some changes last week for, paid search, paid social. How are those predicted to look moving forward? But you're right, it is a bit more digital focused on those weeklies, although many cases, if a client knows that they ran some out of home in the last few weeks, we can try to get that into the model. So it's really just a matter of, yes, speed, access, and interest in understanding the performance between refreshes.
So is there a relationship that you're finding between the digital data, which is available much more frequently, and the non-digital data, which is available far less frequently? And you can use the digital data in a sense to model the non-digital data?
That's not necessarily our process. They're all inputted into our model on an individual signal level. So we tell the model this is an out of home set of data. It should be treated as, we've decided to treat out of home as a bit more upper funnel, looking out a bit farther for the impact. Whereas the lower funnel digital channels tend to get a shorter window of impact because we expect them to have a quicker conversion turnaround. So we set up all of that at the beginning of an engagement to really understand what are each of these channels' functions and how should they be treated within the model. So it's all at kind of an individual signal level and then a holistic review kind of the total each month.
Karen, in the case of the school, what upper funnel media were they using?
So they're what they are or what they were?
Well, before you took it over, what were they doing? And then once you took it over, how did that change?
It's similar, but like what they had before that's different is traditional TV and traditional radio, and now it's all streaming audio and like online video, OTT. So it's still appearing in those same places. It's just purchased digitally now. So that's one of the biggest shifts.
Are they using connected TV?
Yes, they are.
They're using connected TV. So they're pretty much all digital then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've still got full screen TV and getting linear, I see.
Yeah.
And before that, did you say, what did they say? They were using just terrestrial radio and regular linear television?
Yeah, but they also had buys on some of the big platforms, like if I remember right, like Hulu and Spotify, things like that, that they were starting to mix in, but they were doing everything individually.
Can you share what share of their media spend was upper funnel versus lower funnel?
I should know that off my head, but I don't, but they are more, I think maybe like roughly like 60-40, something like that, more heavily invested in the lower funnel because they had more confidence to heavy up there than awareness prior to the MMM.
I see.
Yeah.
Let's talk about differences in companies. Is this school? It sounds like there's a lot of branches, so it must be a fairly large company. Curious to see whether large versus small companies would approach this differently. So there must be a cost to maintaining this level of data refresh. Is this something that smaller companies can do just as easily as large companies, or can it be cost prohibitive?
So in my experience, and I'm working in the agency, my area is more mid-market to enterprise clients, and it is the enterprise clients who are spending the most money on their marketing where it's justifiable to introduce MMM because there is an expense, not just from a technology, but from a people standpoint and just resourcing and process and time-wise to operationalize this. With the mid-market companies, often, that's saying like, is the juice worth the squeeze? It may not, even with the new open source MMMs that have been introduced, it's not quite enough to get them the right skilled people to work on this with the right experience to help them actually activate it in a way that can drive an impact big enough to cover the cost of having done all of this measurement. So there's definitely growing interest that I'm seeing from those smaller to mid-sized clients, but it's still like not quite as smooth as what we can do with the larger media investments.
And I'll say from, my client list definitely spans from mid to pretty large companies. As I mentioned at the beginning, some of the most massive brands you've heard of in the country. But there's definitely ways to scale it. So whether it's doing a, twice per year refresh, if the amount of employees on the client side is just not there. We've also, gone in and pulled some of their media data for them on their behalf. So there's always ways to kind of take on some of that burden, because we do know that data collection is usually one of the main concerns in terms of time, resource, and just being able to organize everything. So yeah, there's slimming down your list of KPIs. There's fewer refreshes. And then really scaling up and down is something we've done over the years, whether it's adding, subtracting, those types of things. But I will say that whatever level we do provide, we want to make sure that it is insightful as much as possible. So if clients are going off and looking for data that they think would be nice, but not necessarily important for making decisions, then that can be something that gets deprioritized too.
We have a question from Matthew. How are you able to validate the outputs from an MMM that they are optimal or better than what the client was previously doing?
Do you have samples of that, Karen, at all? Validation?
So some of the things I mentioned, we do the holdout tests. It's something that we're doing platform by platform right now. And then there is also, like I said, we're often like looking at our underlying data, and we're doing some checks to see when we make this adjustment, do we see like a cause and effect of it in the model that helps us build confidence in the results we're seeing. And also because we keep running it and we're updating our model, and we're seeing consistent results, then we have more confidence in that.
Got it.
Yeah, most of my clients have run those similar holdout tests, and we're able to come within, very small percentage points of what was done externally, as well as, right on in terms of a ROAS or some of those others. We tend to do them on a, DMA or targeting type, and then kind of be able to test those side by side.
Got it. Another question from the floor. How did you drill down the granularity of insights in the case study, like campaign, creative level insights? We often experience multicollinearity issue as it gets more and more granular.
Kelli, do you want to address that from the OptiMine approach?
Yeah, we have thousands of models that go into the final output. So at a daily level, we're putting in, all the way up to 10 levels deep within any channel. So we're able to kind of decipher what the most likely impact at the, 9th, 10th level of the hierarchy looks like. We can understand that was the most important or impactful impression on that day to win out in terms of value. So we have a number of those kind of running all against each other. So in a case like a paid social, some clients will have Meta, Pinterest, Snap, all of those, and then have different campaigns underneath, different targeting types. And so that level of combinations and granularity gives more meat and volume to the model to make those relationships. So that's how we do it. And collinearity tends to not be as likely because there's so many individual combinations that there will be a differentiator across those.
Question from Shashank. Do you use incrementality tests to validate market mix model ROIs? I think you put that to Kelli.
Yeah. Absolutely. A couple of my existing clients have done incrementality tests with Meta in particular, separate from us, and then provided us the results. And we've been able to kind of align with those within a few pennies in terms of ROAS.
And what do those tests look like? Are they RCTs? Are they holdouts?
We've done everything. So it's usually an A/B testing or RCT testing. And then if there are results that are off by enough, we're able to, we mentioned that, as so did Karen, kind of that calibration piece. So if our incrementality results are consistently, 20% higher or 20% lower, we're able to say, we know we have this external test that showed that this type of channel performed better or worse. We can kind of lift that up and bring it more in line with what those expectations are. And the model will continue to treat it as if it was a bit higher. So not only is it a validation, it's also an input for a calibration.
Got it. I think we have time for one more question. The model KPIs that you were showing, Karen, what were they? Was it awareness or some other?
Oh no,
KPI?
I didn't want this. This is a blinded case study, so I wanted to be careful about sharing the client's data.
Okay.
Essentially, when somebody is going for any higher ed, you have the initial inquiry that comes off the website. Then there's a qualification of that inquiry. Then you have to see if they enroll, and then you need to see if they show up at the program. And this is for any higher ed. So the KPIs that we're modeling are of that type of KPI.
I see. And you showed awareness. How do you measure with whom?
Awareness is the portion of spend that we identified as intended to drive awareness. So we have spend tagged as awareness, as separate spend tagged as traffic, separate spend tagged as converting. And so we're able to look at those spend in isolation to understand the impact they're driving.
So really last question, MTA, what's it look like in the future?
Well, it's looking quite different now than it looked a year ago. And in the future, I don't know. And that's one of the things we thought when we put this MTA in place is let's get the data while we can get it and let's learn from it while it's available. And then that was when Google was saying we're taking away the cookie. And now that the cookie did not get taken away, we have these data for longer. So I do think, as I was thinking about the presentation today, thinking about how could we use the MMM a little more to fill this gap between MMM and last click that the MTA is filling right now. So I do think that we might see the MMM gobbling the MTA in the future.
And Google has announced, and I don't recall whether it was opt-in or opt-out. Obviously, if it's opt-in, it's going to go the way of iOS and it'll be about 15%. If it's opt-out, it will have far less of a significant, but they're obviously trying to move people into Sandbox because of giving you the choice. So
Yeah.
MTA is in flux. Well, I want to
Yeah.
thank you both very much, and thank you, OptiMine, for making today's Insight Studio possible. Thanks for everyone who is attending. The recording, the deck, and key takeaways from today's session will be available by next week. And you'll probably see a short 2-question survey pop up on your screen. It helps us program these events for the future. So please just give us your answers and have a good rest of the day. And thanks again, Kelli and Karen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.